Commander Zex's four eyes bulged with disbelief as he watched the security footage replay for the seventh time. The human named Jake had just demolished 12 of the galaxy's most elite Vorthak warriors, using nothing but their own sacred combat techniques. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd personally trained those same Vorthak soldiers for 3 cycles. Now they were nothing more than unconscious lumps scattered across the training floor like discarded toys. "This is impossible," Zex muttered, his tentacles writhing in agitation. Humans aren't supposed to be capable of mastering Vorthak combat forms. Their bone structure is all wrong. Their muscle density is pathetic. They don't even have proper appendages for half the moves. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Crix, leaned closer to the holographic display. The replay showed Jake moving like liquid lightning, his body flowing through combat stances that had taken the Vorthak centuries to perfect. But there was something different about the way Jake executed the moves, something that made Crix's chitinous exoskeleton crawl with unease. "Sir, look at timestamp 447. Crix pointed with claw that trembled slightly. "Watch his eyes during the crimson spiral technique." Zex zoomed in on Jake's face. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human's eyes weren't just focused. They were burning with an intensity that seemed almost supernatural. More disturbing was the slight smile playing at the corners of Jake's mouth. He was enjoying this, actually enjoying the systematic dismantling of supposedly superior alien warriors. "Dear Galactic Core," Zex whispered, "what have we done?" The answer came from the training room's intercom system. Jake's voice, slightly breathless but unmistakably cheerful, crackled through the speakers. "Hey, Commander Zex, I know you're watching. Thanks for the workout partners. When can I get some real opponents? These guys barely lasted 15 minutes. Zex's primary heart skipped 3 beats. The human was taunting him through official military communication channels. The sheer audacity was both terrifying and oddly impressive. "Sir," Crix's voice had dropped to a whisper, "perhaps we should consider terminating the human martial arts program immediately." "Absolutely not." Zex's response came out harsher than intended. His pride was wounded, yes, but his scientific curiosity was absolutely fascinated. "I want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes." The reference to Earth fauna was lost on Crix, who was still processing the implications of human casually requesting stronger opponents after demolishing the station's best fighters. "With respect, sir, the human might be more dangerous than we initially calculated." Zex turned away from the display, his mind racing. 3 months ago, the Galactic Council had assigned him to oversee a cultural exchange program with the newly discovered human species. The program was supposed to be simple. Teach some humans basic self-defense techniques, learn about their primitive combat methods, file a report, and move on to more important matters. But nothing about humans had proven simple. The first surprise came when Jake had mastered basic Threxian defensive postures in under 2 days. Techniques that took most species weeks to learn. Jake absorbed like a sponge drinking water. Then came the second surprise. Jake wasn't just learning the moves, he was improving them. Pull-up file designation human Jake, combat, analysis, day 67. Zex commanded. The holographic display shifted to show Jake sparring with mechanical training drone. But this wasn't the standard training protocol. Jake had somehow convinced the maintenance crew to modify the drone's programming, increasing its speed and aggression far beyond safe parameters. The result was mesmerizing and horrifying in equal measure. Jake moved through a combination of Threxian defense, Vorthak offense, and something else entirely. Something that looked suspiciously like the human combat forms he demonstrated on his first day. But where those original moves had seemed crude and unrefined, they now flowed seamlessly with alien techniques, creating something completely new. "Freeze at timestamp 1233, Zex ordered. The image showed Jake mid-leap, his body twisted in a way that should have been anatomically impossible. But there he was, executing a perfect stellar mantis strike, while somehow incorporating what appeared to be a human technique called a roundhouse kick. The combination had sent the training drone flying across the room with enough force to dent the reinforced wall plating. "Sir," Crix ventured carefully, "I've been monitoring the other human participants as well. Jake isn't the only one showing these adaptations. Zex's tentacles went rigid. "Show me." The display split into multiple feeds, showing different training rooms. In Room 7, a human female named Sarah was practicing Zephyrian meditation techniques. But instead of achieving the standard state of inner calm, she appeared to be entering something closer to a battle trance. Her movements during subsequent combat drills were precise to an unsettling degree. In Room 12, a human called Marcus had been working on Korvaxian strength training. The Korvaxians were renowned throughout the galaxy for their physical power, capable of crushing stone with their bare hands. Marcus wasn't quite at that level yet, but the steel bar he was bending like rubber suggested he was getting close. "This is beyond unusual," Zex admitted, though part of him was secretly thrilled. "Are we witnessing some form of rapid evolutionary adaptation? Or something worse?" Crix replied grimly. "Sir, I've been analyzing the humans' biometric data during training. Their stress hormone levels should be through the roof when facing superior opponents. Instead, they're showing patterns consistent with excitement. They're actually enjoying the challenge of fighting beings that outclass them physically." Zex pondered this information. Most species throughout the galaxy had evolved with healthy self-preservation instincts. When faced with obviously superior opponents, the standard response was retreat, submission, or calling for backup. Humans seemed to have missed that particular evolutionary memo. The intercom crackled again. Jake's voice filled the command center, and Zex could practically hear the grin in his words. "Commander, I've been thinking. You've taught us your fighting techniques, which is awesome, by the way. But I was wondering if you'd like to learn some of ours in return? You know, cultural exchange and all that." Crix shot Zex a look that clearly said, "Absolutely not under any circumstances." Zex found himself nodding in agreement, right up until his scientific curiosity kicked in again. "What did you have in mind, Jake?" Zex found himself asking, despite Crix's increasingly frantic gestures. "Well, sir, humans have been perfecting combat techniques for thousands of years. We got boxing, karate, jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga, mixed martial arts, military combatives, and about 50 other disciplines. I'm thinking we could show you some basics, and maybe you could show us some of those advanced serpentine nebula techniques I keep hearing about." The request hung in the air like a poisonous gas cloud. Zex knew he should refuse immediately. The serpentine nebula techniques were classified at the highest levels, known only to the galaxy's most elite warriors. Teaching them to humans would be like handing nuclear weapons to children. But then again, Jake had just proven that traditional assumptions about human limitations were clearly incorrect. "I'll consider your proposal," Zex replied, already knowing what his answer would be. "Excellent. Oh, and Commander, you might want to reinforce the training room floors. Human combat techniques can get a little enthusiastic." The communication ended, leaving Zex and Crix staring at each other in the sudden silence. "Sir," Crix said carefully, "I feel compelled to remind you that the Galactic Council specifically instructed us to assess human combat potential, not enhance it." Zex waved a dismissive tentacle. "We're conducting scientific research, Lieutenant. How can we properly assess their potential without understanding their capabilities fully?" It was a thin justification, and they both knew it. But Zex's curiosity had evolved into something approaching obsession. These humans were rewriting everything the galaxy thought it knew about combat evolution and species adaptation. "Besides," Zex added with what might have been a smile if his species possessed the proper facial muscles, "what's the worst that could happen?" The question would haunt him for the next several weeks, especially after Jake's first demonstration of something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu left 3 Korvaxian warriors questioning their entire understanding of leverage and physics. But by then, it would be far too late to put this particular genie back in its bottle. The humans had tasted alien martial arts and found them delicious. Now they wanted the full-course meal, and Zex was apparently the chef they'd chosen to provide it. In the depths of space, on a small research station orbiting a forgotten moon, the foundation of galactic combat doctrine was about to be shaken to its very core. And it all started with one simple question that nobody had bothered to ask before Jake arrived. What happens when you teach humans how to fight like aliens? The answer, as the galaxy would soon discover, was far more complicated and dangerous than anyone could have possibly imagined. Humans didn't just learn alien fighting techniques. They absorbed them, improved them, and combined them with their own brutal innovations to create something entirely new, something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. But that revelation was still days away. For now, Zek sat in his command center, watching replay footage of impossible human achievements and planning lessons that would echo through galactic history. The irony was delicious. In trying to assess human combat potential, they were about to unleash it on an unsuspecting universe. 3 weeks had passed since Jake's demonstration with the Vorthak warriors, and Commander Zex was beginning to suspect he had made the greatest mistake of his military career. What started as a simple cultural exchange program had evolved into something that kept him awake during his sleep cycles, staring at the ceiling of his quarters while his mind raced through increasingly apocalyptic scenarios. The humans weren't just learning anymore. They were teaching. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." Lieutenant Crix burst into command center, his usually composed demeanor cracking like cheap armor plating. The humans have started what they call a fight club in Cargo Bay 7. Zex's 4 eyes swiveled toward his second-in-command with the slow, deliberate movement of a predator who had just spotted something dangerous. "They've started what now?" "A fight club, sir. Apparently, it's a human tradition where individuals engage in voluntary combat for recreational purposes. But, sir, they're not fighting each other anymore." The implications of that statement hit Zex like a plasma torpedo to the brain. Who are they fighting? Crix's chitinous exoskeleton had turned a sickly shade of green. "Everyone who volunteers, sir. Word has spread throughout the station. We have Korvaxians, Threxians, even some of the Zephyrian monks participating. The humans have somehow convinced half the station's population that getting beaten unconscious is entertaining." Zex felt his tentacles curl into knots of anxiety. "Please tell me Jake isn't running this operation." "Actually, sir, it appears to be organized by the human female, Sarah. Jake is what they term the head instructor. He's been teaching our people human combat techniques in exchange for advanced alien martial arts. It's become some sort of bizarre knowledge trading system." The command center's main display activated automatically, showing feeds from Cargo Bay 7. What Zex saw made his primary heart stop beating for several seconds. The cargo bay had been transformed into an improvised arena, complete with reinforced floor plating and what appeared to be seating areas constructed from supply crates. In the center of this makeshift coliseum, Jake was demonstrating something called Muay Thai to a group of fascinated Threxian warriors. His movements were fluid and devastating, each strike delivered with precision that spoke of years of practice. But the truly disturbing part was the way the aliens were absorbing every technique, their natural learning abilities enhanced by weeks of human-taught adaptation methods. "Pause at timestamp 722, Zek commanded. The display froze on an image that would haunt his nightmares for cycles to come. A Korvaxian warrior, species renowned for their incredible strength but traditionally limited tactical thinking, was executing a perfect human boxing combination while simultaneously incorporating Vorthak footwork and Threxian defensive postures. "Dear Galactic Corps," Zex whispered, "they're creating hybrid warriors." The communication system crackled to life, and Sarah's voice filled the command center. Unlike Jake's casual confidence, Sarah's tone carried the unmistakable authority of a natural leader. "Commander Zex, could you please report to Cargo Bay 7 at your earliest convenience? We have a proposition that might interest you." Zex looked at Crix, who was making frantic throat-cutting gestures that clearly meant, "Do not go down there under any circumstances." It was probably excellent advice. The rational thing to do would be to lock down the cargo bay, separate the human from the rest of the crew, and file an emergency report with the Galactic Council. Instead, Zex found himself heading toward the turbolift. "Sir, please reconsider," Crix called after him. "The humans have demonstrated an alarming ability to convince people to do things that are clearly not in their best interests." "That's precisely why I need to see this firsthand," Zex replied, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed his own reasoning. The truth was, his scientific curiosity had evolved into something approaching obsession. These humans represented the most fascinating discovery of his career, and he couldn't bring himself to shut down the research now. The turbolift descended toward the cargo decks with mechanical precision, but Zex's mind was racing faster than light-speed engines. 3 months ago, humans had been classified as a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. Now, they were systematically revolutionizing galactic combat doctrine and apparently running underground fight clubs that had become the most popular entertainment on the station. The lift doors opened with a soft hiss, and Zek stepped into what could only be described as controlled chaos. The cargo bay buzzed with activity as dozens of different species practiced combat techniques in organized groups. But this wasn't the random violence he had expected. This was structured, methodical, and somehow deeply civilized despite its brutal nature. Sarah approached him with the confident stride of someone who had never doubted her place in the universe. She was smaller than Jake, but there was something in her eyes that suggested crossing her would be a particularly bad idea. "Commander, thank you for coming," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to what we like to call the Galactic Combat Academy." "Academy?" Zex repeated, accepting the handshake and noting that Sarah's grip was significantly stronger than it had been 3 weeks ago. "I thought this was recreational fighting." Sarah's laugh was warm but carried an edge that made Zex's survival instincts twitch nervously. "Oh, it started that way. But then we realized something interesting. Every species in the galaxy has developed unique combat techniques based on their physiology and environmental challenges. But nobody had ever tried combining them systematically." She gestured toward the various training groups scattered throughout the bay. In one corner, a group of Zephyrian monks were learning human meditation techniques that somehow enhanced their already impressive mental disciplines. Near the far wall, Korvaxian warriors practiced human grappling methods that utilized their superior strength in ways their traditional combat forms had never explored. "The results have been fascinating," Sarah continued. "For example, did you know that Threxian flexibility combined with human striking techniques creates a combat style that's nearly impossible to defend against? Or that Korvaxian strength enhanced with human tactical thinking produces warriors that are essentially unstoppable in close combat?" Zex was beginning to understand why his sleep cycles had been so disturbed lately. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A formal program." Jake's voice came from behind him. Zex turned to see the human approaching with that casual confidence that had become his trademark. "Think about it, Commander. The galaxy is full of conflicts between different species, right? Wars break out because nobody understands how to fight alongside aliens, only against them. But what if that changed?" Sarah picked up the thread seamlessly. "What if we created a training program that taught cross-species combat cooperation? Imagine Korvaxian strength supported by Threxian agility and human adaptability, or Vorthak precision enhanced by Zephyrian mental discipline and human creativity." The idea was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. Zex could see the potential benefits immediately. Interspecies conflicts often arose from misunderstandings and incompatible combat doctrines. A unified training program could indeed reduce those tensions. But he could also see the dangers. Creating warriors trained in multiple alien combat disciplines would fundamentally alter the balance of power throughout the galaxy. And the humans seemed to be positioning themselves at the center of this revolution. The Galactic Council would never approve such a program, Zex said carefully. Jake's grin was practically predatory. "That's the beautiful part, Commander. They don't need to approve it. This is a cultural exchange program, remember? We're just sharing knowledge between different species, completely within the parameters of your original mission. Besides," Sarah added, "look around you. Do you see any conflicts here? Any species discrimination or territorial disputes? Everyone's too busy learning and improving to worry about old grudges." Zex had to admit she had a point. The cargo bay was filled with natural enemies working together, sharing techniques, and apparently enjoying themselves immensely. A Vorthak warrior was patiently explaining defensive postures to a group of traditionally aggressive Korvaxians. Meanwhile, a Threxian was demonstrating flexibility exercises to some humans who were somehow making them even more effective. "What would you need from me?" Zex asked, already knowing he was going to regret the question. "Official recognition of the program," Sarah replied immediately. "Access to advanced training facilities, and permission to invite participants from other stations and planets. You want to spread this throughout the galaxy," Zex said. It wasn't a question. We want to revolutionize how species interact in combat situations, Jake corrected. Think about it, Commander. Right now, when different species have to work together militarily, it's usually a disaster because everyone has incompatible fighting styles and tactical thinking. But if everyone shared a common foundation of cross-species combat knowledge, wars would become more efficient, Zex finished grimly. Or less necessary, Sarah countered. Hard to start a fight with someone when you've trained alongside their species and learned to respect their capabilities. The argument was compelling, but Zex couldn't shake the feeling that he was being manipulated by experts. The humans had demonstrated an unsettling ability to convince people to do things they wouldn't normally consider. And now, they were asking him to help them spread their influence throughout the galaxy. I need time to consider this proposal, Zex said finally. Of course, Sarah nodded graciously. But while you're thinking, why don't you try a demonstration? We've been working on some techniques that might interest someone with your particular physiology. Before Zex could object, he found himself being led to a training mat where Jake was waiting with what appeared to be a modified combat stance designed specifically for beings with tentacles. The next hour passed in a blur of movement, instruction, and the gradually dawning realization that everything he thought he knew about his own combat capabilities was completely wrong. By the time Zex returned to his quarters, his mind was made up. He sent a message to the Galactic Council requesting permission to expand the cultural exchange program and establish a permanent cross-species combat training facility. He told himself it was for the greater good of galactic peace and understanding. He almost believed it, too. But deep in his heart, Zex knew the truth. The humans had won again, not through superior force or advanced technology, but through something far more dangerous. They had made their ideas irresistible. The galaxy was about to change in ways that nobody could predict, and it all started with a simple question that should have been answered before the first human set foot on a station. When you teach someone to fight, who are you really arming? The answer was becoming clearer every day, and Zex wasn't sure he liked what he saw, but it was far too late to stop now. The humans had tasted the galaxy's fighting secrets, and they weren't going to be satisfied until they had consumed them all. Revolution had come to the stars, and it wore a smile.